Quite an experience to live in uncertainty, isn't it? That's what it is to be a critic. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Remakes that are actually better than their originals. I've watched sequels outshine their first films like wildfires. All those moments will be lost in arrogance, like tears from fanboys. Time to contemplate. Did we get it?
Yeah, I think we got it.
Okay. Let's talk about this trailer. Blade Runner. One of the most influential, iconic, eye-catching, and mind-blowing science fiction films ever made. Directed by Ridley Scott, starring Harrison Ford, Rutger Hauer, and Daryl Hannah, released in 1982, it's a bold and beautiful story about the nature of humanity, the value of life, and what it really means to be alive. It's also very famous for having gone through 7 different cuts over the years. There's a version that Ridley Scott wanted, the version that the studio wanted, this version that the audience got at first, and the versions that came and went all along the way. Now, I am of the firm opinion that the final cut is the absolute cut of Blade Runner. The theatrical cut is good as a little piece of curiosity, to be perfectly honest. Now, as you can probably tell, I love Blade Runner. I think it is one of the best films ever made, and that is definitely a film that I draw a lot of influence from when I'm considering my own personal style. And it is a film that I personally have always believed should never be expanded upon. There was no need to make a sequel or prequel, and definitely not a remake. It's one of those films like Gone with the Wind that nobody ever really needs to touch. It's perfectly fine the way it is now, let's not do any more with it. So when I heard that they were actually making a sequel to Blade Runner, I was kinda nervous about it, and still am, to be perfectly honest. However, as things got deeper and deeper into its development and certain names started popping up, and that trailer came out.
I had your job once. I was good at it. Things were simpler then.
I started to have a different feeling about it. So here are a couple reasons, in no particular order, as to why I am actually surprisingly excited for Blade Runner 2049. First up, the director. Director Denis Villeneuve has proven himself to be an incredible talent in storytelling. His previous films include Prisoners, Sicario, and most recently, Arrival. So this already shows that he can handle science fiction pretty well. The thing about Villeneuve is that he knows how to tell a serious story that can go into dark and scary places, but he does so in a way that doesn't feel alienating or too scary. Plus, even at his most serious of moments, he's still able to allow moments of levity so that we're not completely in the dark, unlike a certain other director I could mention. His style of storytelling is exactly the kind of style that something like Blade Runner would need. So I'm happy to say that I think this new sequel is in very good hands, at least in terms of directing. But what about the other main thing about Blade Runner that most people tend to associate it with in terms of high quality? Like, say, I don't know, its cinematography? 3 words. Roger frickin' Deakins. This man is one of the best cinematographers out there, having previously photographed such iconic films as The Shawshank Redemption, Skyfall, and more recently, Hail Caesar. Deakins has a very distinct style that I just love. He's also worked with Denis Villeneuve in the previously mentioned Prisoners in Sicario, both equally very well photographed, by the way. The thing about Deakins is that he's able to create a nice dark style that's not so dark you can't see what's going on. His minimalistic, practical lighting style is also very good for Blade Runner, as the first film more or less had that similar kind of style. But from the trailer, there is one aspect about the cinematography that has me a little annoyed. That is, of course, being... yeah. Here's the thing. The origin teal color palette is totally fine and it looks cool in some movies, but everyone and their mother has been using it in everything they've been making. It was cool for the first couple times, but when it's every other movie that comes out within a year, it gets a little dull. Plus, for this movie, it looks like they're pushing it to its absolute extreme. Total orange to total teal, back to total orange again. Now, to be fair, this is still only a teaser trailer, which probably means that the colors palette that we've seen is not going to be the final color palette for the actual film. Plus, given that it's Roger Deakins, I am absolutely certain that it's got to be a very good, strong reason that it has this overused color palette. And to be fair, the original Blade Runner had a mostly teal color palette anyway, so at least it's still somewhat in the spirit of the first movie. And from there, we can move on to Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott, who previously directed what we now have to call the first Blade Runner film, is acting as executive producer for the sequel, which is obviously a very good sign. With Ridley Scott on board, the film will get the proper direction that it needs in order to tell the story right. Blade Runner is definitely Ridley Scott's baby, having gone through 7 cuts of it, and he is definitely not gonna let anyone muck it up. So okay, we got 3 very good people in charge of the general story and direction of the film, so we know that it's at least going to definitely be a proper Blade Runner sequel. But even so, there's still some things about it that I'm a little nervous about. The story. Now, I'm presenting this video under the assumption that all of you who are watching have in fact seen Blade Runner. But I am also aware that some of my audience might not have seen it, in which case, why the hell have you not? So I'm going to give you a very polite spoiler warning. If you have not seen the final cut of Blade Runner, stop the video, go watch it, then come back and finish it up, okay? Okay. One of the greatest debates that the film has sparked is the argument as to whether or not Deckard, i.e. Harrison Ford's character, was actually a replicant. It's interesting to note that when Harrison Ford initially signed up to do the movie, he insisted that he would only do it if his character was not a replicant.
There was a bit of contest between Ridley and I over whether or not Deckard, the character I played, was a replicant or not. I felt that it was important for the audience to have a human representation, so I resisted the idea of being a replicant.
There was never a scene where he would say it or speak it, you see. Instead, he would say with great irony and as if he almost hated himself.
And in the original novel that the book is based upon, well, loosely based upon, Deckard was most definitely a human. But in the final cut of the film, there are certain hints that are dropped along to give the impression that Deckard might actually be a replicant. And the final shot of the film absolutely cements that possibility. But see, here's the thing. The possibility of Deckard being a replicant is based upon the idea that replicants can have memories artificially implanted into their minds. Now, they say that they do that with the androids, i.e. replicants, in the movie, but they never say that they can't do that to human minds as well. So what I'm hoping for is that the story of the sequel will explore the idea of the Tyrell Corporation using this memory technology on human beings as well as replicants. On the other hand, they could very easily come up with contrived and lame excuses as to how Deckard managed to override the 4-year lifespan, thus rendering the ending of the first film totally moot, and you see why I'm nervous about this. Whichever direction they choose to go with the story, at the very least, I hope that they're going to be smart with it. And this leads me to the one aspect of this movie that makes me the most nervous for the sequel. It's a smart movie. Blade Runner is, above all else, very intelligent. It's a movie that takes its story seriously, it takes its audience seriously, and it expects you to take it seriously. It does not make anything dumb or stupid or too easy or too lazy. It presents everything in a way that makes you pay attention and rewards you for doing so. Sadly, an awful lot of movies in recent years have been kind of avoiding that. I mean, yeah, we still get some smart movies here and there, but not as many as we used to. And frankly, I think we definitely deserve more. So while at the moment I'm not totally optimistic Blade Runner 2049 will be as smart as the first Blade Runner film, I'm hoping that at the very least it will have enough brains in its head to not insult the audience. So yeah, something I never thought I would say in a million years, I am actually very excited for Blade Runner 2049. I hope that you are too. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm TheNorm, telling you what Hollywood does not want you to hear. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.